This is part one of a two-part overtime episode discussing Dan Mullen's move from Mississippi State to Florida and the different perspectives that fans have on the move.
All right, what's up, running out the clock listeners? It is time for an overtime episode. As you know by now, these are the episodes that we do when the clock has run out on our weekly show and we want to go a little bit deeper into other topics. And I believe this week you're going to hear from, on this particular overtime episode, you're going to hear from me, Chandler, and Keith. Say hey, Keith.
Hello.
You're going to hear from us taking one side of an argument, and you're going to hear from Joseph and Roe taking the other side of the argument. And that argument, of course, is whether or not Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh should. We're not talking about that. We're not touching on it.
We have officially transitioned from an SEC podcast to a Politico podcast.
No, we're going to talk about something, and Keith knows better than I do what we're going to talk about. So, Keith, what are we talking about?
Well, so as you all know, Dan Mullen, after a successful 9-year stint at Mississippi State, decided to leave for potentially greener and larger pastures to go back to the University of Florida to take the head coaching job there for the football program. And there, essentially what happened was there were a lot of State fans that were very upset with Dan Mullen when he decided to leave. And so we're going to sort of take one side of the argument of State fans probably should not have been as upset as they were. And then Joseph and Roe will kind of offer their counterpoint to defend State fans feeling how they did and were justified in their reasoning, at least, of them being upset that Dan left. And specifically, I guess, the manner in which he left. So that's sort of the premise behind this two-part OT episode.
Well, if there is one thing that I love talking about, it is Don Merlin's and Don Merlin's coaching ability and State and whatever. So, okay, I'm going to confess right now that I don't understand. I mean, I understand all the emotional reasons of like he was our coach and now he's gone and I'm mad, but I don't understand what argument anybody has to other than that to say that, oh, he did State wrong, he did the way he left was wrong, whatever. Like I mean, I've heard people try to make those arguments and I've not. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, so
which makes for terrible podcasting.
Yeah, essentially, because I've been in the same boat as you are in that coaches leave, they go to bigger jobs. I'm going to refrain from using the word better because better is a better job. It's subjective. Well,
I mean, it's. I guess that's where. Finish your thought, but I mean, I think that word better is kind of important to the discussion,
right? And I'll kind of jump back to that in a second, but I didn't understand it, but State fans have always kind of had more of a closeness and family mentality with their school. And so, Dan Mullen comes in, he's like part of the family. All right. Well, he leaves to go to a bigger, maybe not better position. And from what I've heard, from what I've been told, it's not necessarily that he left. It's that he quote unquote lied about it for weeks. And B, when he left, he actively recruited players away from State. And then, of course, he basically took all of his coaches with him. And then there was some talk about how he kind of phoned in the Egg Bowl, and that made a lot of people angry. So yeah, those are sort of the primary reasons why State fans are quite upset.
Yeah, I still think all of those reasons are bogus. Look, first off, and I guess this is where we can begin to talk. We can begin to converse about this. The idea of Florida as being a better job than Mississippi State. Florida is a better job than Mississippi State. I mean, hands down, it's a better job than Ole Miss. It's a better job than Tennessee. It's a better job than obviously Vanderbilt or Kentucky or South Carolina. I mean, outside of Alabama and Georgia, maybe Texas A&M, Florida's far and away a better job. I mean, Florida has so many advantages that that even a school like LSU doesn't have. For one, it is right in the heart of one of the three hotbeds of high school football talent. I mean, you could go and get, where you're like, while you're at Mississippi State, you're competing to get, you're competing to get the Dandy Dozen. That's kind of what that's kind of the benchmark for success for Mississippi recruiting. You have the Dandy Dozen being the 12 best players, and most years, all 12 of those players are not Division I SEC athletes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Florida, you can go 300-400 players deep, and you're still finding SEC caliber athletes.
Yeah. In Florida, you can throw a rock and hit like a 4-star recruit.
You've got those kids down in like South Florida they did that ESPN special on them like chasing rabbits through the swamp. And I don't remember what it was about, but they were just all really, really fast. And I mean, you can go and get, and even when you go, I mean, if you want to go and look at other, players who were considered, probably afterthoughts in recruiting, turned out being superstars. I mean, I think you look at a kid like Dexter McCluster a few years ago at Ole Miss. Dexter McCluster would have started anywhere, and he had no offers coming out of high school being in Florida. So, and I mean, he's obviously a special case there. But the talent advantage of recruiting in Florida is better than it is at Mississippi State. You can lock down the state of Mississippi every year. Theoretically, you could. I mean, neither Ole Miss nor Mississippi State have ever locked down the program in recruiting consistently, just because of the dynamics of the state and the way those things work. But theoretically, you could do that, and you would still have to go and get players from Georgia or Florida or Texas or wherever to supplement your roster. You could not leave the state of Florida and fill out a roster that can compete and win for SEC and national championships in Florida, like just in Florida. So, so you've got the recruiting base. Obviously, you've got the money. I know that everybody was kind of talking about contracts or whatever, and it sounded like State was willing to match the offer that Florida had made Mullen. I think he ended up signing for what, $6 million a year.
6.1 or something like that. Yeah.
So Mississippi State,
which, by the way, weirdly enough, he actually just signed the contract like a week ago.
Yeah, I mean that happens. That's not that.
It seems odd to me, but
so the money's there. The Florida brand is better than the Mississippi State brand. Again, that's not. I mean, I'm an Ole Miss fan. I'm talking trash about State, whatever. But no, the Florida brand is better. And then on top of that, Florida's won a national championship in the last 10 years. Is it 10 years? 2008.
10 years this year. Yeah.
Yeah, they've won a national championship in the last 10 years. They have. I mean, every time you turn on the SEC network for SEC Today or whatever their knockoff version of Game Day is, you have a walking, talking Florida advertisement in Tim Tebow. You know, and I mean, you look across the NFL, and there are big name Florida guys everywhere. And so, you know, just the profile of the University of Florida is so much bigger than the profile of Mississippi State University. And then going back to recruiting, you know, briefly, I think the last several years back this up that, you know, you can get out-of-state players to come to Florida more easily than you can get them to come to Mississippi State. Mississippi State just does not have a national recruiting appeal. And I think as you go back and look at who they've signed and where they've come from and all those kinds of things, I mean, that backs me up there. So, you know, I don't have a problem saying emphatically that Mississippi State is a better job. I mean, Florida is a better job than Mississippi State.
Yeah, and you know, State has out-of-state players coming there, but it's not like you know, several years ago, Florida got Dominique Easley to come down to Florida, and he's from New Jersey, and he was a 4 or 5 star player. Like that sort of thing is not what's coming to State, and that's the issue. Is you know, Florida can recruit 3 through 5 star players in Florida, but also have that draw to bring 3, 4, and 5 star players from other states. I think where the subjectivity of is it a better job is that, look, State fans, despite maybe their frustration with some of, you know, Dan Mullen's play calls or his coaching strategy in big games, you know, they loved him because, I mean, look, he came in after Kroon left, and I think Kroon did a good job of kind of setting the foundation, but in terms of talent and where they were going, it was kind of a mess. So he had to kind of rebuild the house there, but he took them to a number 1 national ranking. And I would assume that most State fans, if you asked them, do you see Mississippi State ever becoming a number 1 nationally ranked team, they would have all said no, like never. But it happened. But he was loved there, and they would have kept him for as long as he wanted to stay there. And money wasn't going to be an issue because, like you said, they were willing to match it. They would have paid him what he wanted. He basically could have stayed there forever. But kind of jumping into maybe the other reasons, and I'm just going to kind of go down the list here, and then we can.
Well, I think touching on something that you said. I mean, I think the number 1 ranking is kind of as good of an argument for him leaving as anything else, because look, when you talk about Mississippi State at its absolute best, at the high water mark of the football program, they got ranked number 1, which is awesome. And then they lost to Alabama, they lost to Ole Miss, and they lost to Georgia Tech. So the literal high water mark of their program is a 10-3 season with the guy who was a first-round draft pick. Was Prescott? No, he's like a 4th round. Anyway, whatever he was, a Heisman contender at quarterback. And that was all the stars aligning just perfectly for that one season. And so Mississippi State, at its high water mark, is a 10-3 program, and Florida at its high water mark is a program that's going to win multiple national championships in a row. Yeah,
I wouldn't ever comfortably or confidently say that State would ever really contend for something nationally. I think that maybe in their best years, when like Saban's gone and the SEC is kind of evened out a little bit, maybe in their better years they could contend for an SEC spot. But I don't think that they'll ever be in a place to where they can,
and that's
go through a college football playoff and win a national championship.
That's the disadvantage that smaller programs like Ole Miss and Mississippi State are at, that they can't compete, and they'll have with the right coaching. And again, Mississippi State proved this, and major hats off to them and to Dan Mullen for doing it. But they prove that in when you get the right ingredients, right, when you get the really good college quarterback, you get the right combination of redshirt seniors and experienced players, and I mean honestly, you get Texas A&M and Auburn being down, LSU being down. You get those teams being down at just the right time. Then you can, and those things are going to happen. I mean, eventually Alabama is gonna fall off again, and so you'll get those times, those seasons where it will work out. But those are the kinds of seasons that 20 years later, you're still waiting for the next one, and you're telling your kids about the time that you were in the stadium when Mississippi State beat Auburn to claim the number one ranking. Whereas at Florida, if you get ranked number one, if you build the program back up to where you can be ranked number one, then you have a reasonable expectation to be kind of in that top 5 every year.
Right. And that's something that I think, small programs have to build into big programs eventually. But it takes, knocking it out of the park with coaches for basically like 3, 4, or 5 different coaches to just keep building up on a program. Can State do it? Maybe. I don't know. But kind of going back into maybe some of the reasons why State fans were upset. And I'm with you ultimately. I think that it was basically just hurt feelings, and not maybe a legitimate reason in my mind. So the first thing was they said that he lied about leaving, and honestly, I don't know what they expect. That's par for the course when coaches are being talked to by other schools. They aren't going to come right out and say it, because then that provides a distraction for the team.
Yeah.
During the season, every time basically since Urban Meyer left, every time there's been an opening at Florida, he's always been asked as soon as it happens. And for weeks, he's asked, well, are you thinking about going back to Florida? Have they contacted you? And the answer is always going to be, I'm focused on this team right now.
Mm-hmm.
Or, nope, I'm happy. If they ask that and he says, yeah, they contacted me, I'm thinking about going back to the great job. But, yeah, so, we think that we match up really well against Ole Miss this week. That's a horrific thing to do. And imagine the vitriol of State fans had he said that.
Well, I mean, look, you say what you have to say, because the reason that you gotta go way back. You gotta go way back to find this. It was like 97, 98 when Tommy Tuberville left Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. Look, a lot of the same things apply. Auburn was a better job. Auburn was a better program. Auburn, he had a season where he went, undefeated, and because of the stupid BCS system, didn't get to play for national championship. He recruited amazing players left and right. Whatever. Like Auburn was a objectively better job, but he was quoted as saying, the only way I'm ever leaving Oxford is in a pine box. Implying that he was openly and actively telling people that he was not leaving, and that's just like you can't make emphatic statements one way or the other.
You can't say that and then expect people not to hate you.
But the other aspect to that, and I think there was a willful ignorance, I think, by State fans, that they were like, no, Mullen doesn't want to leave. Mullen loves to start. And I know this because I had several conversations with just kind of regular, like not like crazy message board people, not people who necessarily were like, investing their whole lives into the program, but people who are big State fans, they kind of continually said, Mullen loves Starkville, Megan Mullen loves Starkville, Megan Mullen's never going to leave, whatever. And it's like, look, it's not a coincidence that his name comes up every offseason for just about every open job. I mean, right. I remember listening to a podcast, I think it was 3 years ago, where Stephen Godfrey was saying that, and Stephen Godfrey's a guy that would know, is a pretty reliable source when it comes to reporting college football, said that Mullen was applying for every job he could. I mean, even to the point, I think he was talking to UConn at one point. Like he's been ready to get out for a few years. But then the big red flag is that he goes out and he hires Jimmy Sexton. And Jimmy Sexton, as an agent, is the most powerful individual in college football. Jimmy Sexton, 10 years ago, when he got Nick Saban to go to Alabama, he changed the face of college football, maybe forever. Mm-hmm. And so when he goes out and he hires Jimmy Sexton, that
tells you that he's not content with just hanging out in Starkville.
Yeah, I mean, he's either fixing to get a contract from State that's so big that they can't justify paying it, or he's leaving. Period. And that's, again, the writing was on the wall, and so you just kind of come out and you're like, no, we'll talk. They say, Coach, has anybody talked to you about Florida? Well, nobody's talked to him about Florida. Now somebody's talked to Jimmy Sexton about Florida on his behalf, but nobody's talked to him about Florida. He's not the one making the calls and having the conversations. Especially when Scott Strickland is the general manager, the athletic director there. They already know each other. So, did he? I mean, was it technically lying? Sure, but that's just the way that it works.
Yeah, I mean, if Florida's talking to his agent, Dan Mullen knows about it. But again, like, a head coach is not going to be totally upfront and honest when a school has approached him about a job in season. Like, he's just not. Like, he knows better. So I'm not sure what they were expecting. I think part of it too is that State is used to firing coaches and not really used to a coach being like, you know what, this was great, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where like a guy or a girl is always doing the dumping, but then when somebody dumps them, they're just left completely like bewildered.
Yeah. He's the first coach. He's the first coach in Mississippi State history since Darrell Royal left for Texas in the 1940s. So we're talking almost 80 years.
Yeah.
And Darrell Royal is the guy who the Texas Stadium is named after. He's the first coach to leave Mississippi State since Darrell Royal with a winning record. Even Jackie Sherrill, the guy who they're going to be acknowledging as the winningest coach in Mississippi State history, is 75-75-2. So
right,
he doesn't have a winning record.
Right. He's the winningest coach in Mississippi State history because he was there for 1,000,000 years. And
I think Mullen was only like 6 or 7 wins off from what he did.
Right. Like if he was there this year, he would have passed that.
But yeah, so the lying thing, like, okay, maybe, but that's the way it works. I mean, there's a newspaper cover somewhere of Nick Saban saying, I will not be the coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide next season. It's like, well, okay, we believe you.
Yeah, and if you look at college football, that happens every year with like 10 different coaches.
Because it's like you already said, it has to happen. You can't say, oh yeah, I'm out after this year. We're gonna, I'm gonna,
I've already signed a contract. We're just waiting for the season to end.
Yeah. I mean, Jimbo did it, and that went horribly.
Right.
But $7.5 million.
Yeah. When you're getting that much money, you can afford not to give a crap what people think. So the second part is that kind of the how he left, in that he sort of checked out against Ole Miss. He phoned it in, and then when he officially left, he called up recruits and was actively like poaching recruits away from state. The phoning it in thing against Ole Miss, like, I understand. That would be upsetting because it's your biggest rivalry game. You need to win, and then your head coach is sort of sleepwalking. But the whole going after the recruits, we talked about this before, that college football players, it's sort of a 90 to like 95%. They're coming for the coach, and not necessarily like the prestige of the program or like the school's facilities. Yeah, sure, those are selling points. But if players don't like the coach, they ain't coming.
Yeah.
So it is pretty standard procedure that when a coach leaves, he reaches out to the guys that he's been getting and says, "Hey, look, heads up, I'm going to Florida. If you still want to go to state, it's a great school, but we would love to have you at Florida."
Yeah,
like that happens.
Well, let me go back to the whole like he walked through the Egg Bowl thing, because he didn't. He absolutely didn't. First, you can't diminish the fact that Nick Fitzgerald broke his ankle in that game. So, I mean, you lose your starting quarterback and you put in a guy who has not taken any meaningful snaps, and he almost led them back to a win.
Right.
So there's that. But then at the same time, okay, as the Egg Bowl is happening, the idea is not that Mullen is going to Florida. The idea is that Mullen is going to Tennessee. So you've got to remember the timeline here a little bit.
Which, by the way, is anybody who actually thought that's hilarious.
Well, it's not so much that it's funny anybody thought that. It's that, again, remember who we're talking about here. Not Dan Mullen, Jimmy Sexton. And so what Sexton is doing is Sexton's calling Scott Strickland, and he's like, "Look, man, I got Fulmer on the line here, and he's talking about this much money for this kind of deal, and this kind of autonomy." And then he's turning around, he's calling Fulmer. He's like, "Look, Phil, I just talked to Scott, and Scott's thinking about this, and this, and whatever." So Sexton is playing these two schools against each other, and probably a couple of other schools too. And he really needed to win that game against Ole Miss, because it's a bad business decision to mail that game in. Because if he does, then it's like, maybe if he actually does mail it in, and it's that obvious to athletic directors and things like that, it's like, hey, like how do we know in a contract year, down here in Gainesville, he's not just going to mail it in the week before the Florida State game? How do we know that he's not going to mail it in before Tennessee, Georgia, or Tennessee, Florida?
Right.
I don't think it's a given that State wins the game if Nick Fitzgerald stays healthy, because everybody talks about like, oh, look, he was going to like dominate him or whatever, and he probably would have made a couple of plays that would have put the game in their favor. But before he got hurt, he was 1 for 5 for I think 12 yards and an interception, so he wasn't off to a great start. So I don't really buy that he mailed it in, because I just don't think that's how it works, because again, the whole, like, that's the only game on TV that night everybody's watching, and they see it. And so if they're seeing a coach who's obviously mailed it in, then it's like, well, that affects your bottom line.
Yeah, more so just mailing it in because you're on your way out. This is your biggest rival in one of your biggest years, and if programs and people and players see that you're just not into a big rivalry game, then like that causes a lot of doubt. Even if the agreement was in place before the game, he knew that he was going. He still that's a recruiting moment for him for Florida. Because players look. There's a reason why players show up to games against rivals and not against Colorado State. They go to Florida, Tennessee. They go to Florida, Georgia. They go to State Ole Miss. They go to Tennessee, Georgia. They go to Alabama versus Auburn. They go to those big games to see how the atmosphere is, to see how the teams compete against each other, and to see how the coaches handle things. Those are all very important things. So I don't know if he actually mailed it in. Sometimes coaches have bad games. Maybe that's what happened. But like you said, it doesn't make any sense for him to have just willingly said, I'm leaving in a week. I'm going to be in Gainesville next month.
Yeah, that, and then also there's an extent to which, it doesn't matter what your coach does. It's the Egg Bowl. Like it's Ole Miss, Mississippi State. If you got to have your coach to get you rah pumped up for that, then you ain't playing the game. That's what the a couple of years ago in 2014. Again, in my ability to relate everything to an Ole Miss situation. In 2014, before the Egg Bowl, that was the year the state was number 1, and they came in. I think they came into that game number 4.
And Ole Miss was number 2 that year at some point, weren't they?
Yeah. No, number 2 at some point, but then Laquan Treadwell's leg broke in half, and Bo Wallace's ankle was taped on by super glue and duct tape, and a lot
Dr. Bo working his magic.
A lot of injuries going on, but anyway, so that year before the Egg Bowl, it was very kind of widely known, and I've heard C.J. Johnson, former Ole Miss player, I've heard him talk openly about this, that the team knew at that moment before the game, they knew that Hugh Freeze was leaving to go to Florida. That was when Florida ended up hiring Jim McElwain, but they knew that he was going to go to Florida, and they were like, you know what? Screw this guy. We're just going to go out and play as hard as we can, and we're we're going to beat State for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just a certain amount of I think playing playing with pride that you just kind of do. It's kind of the same thing that I've heard a lot of State people say, but Moorhead just didn't show any he didn't show any emotion on the sideline in that game against Kentucky. I can't he didn't have them boys ready to play. It's look, if you've got to have the coach tell you, hey, we're going on the road to an SEC opponent, and we're trying to do something special. If you've got to have the coach tell you, or you've got to have him yell at you to get in your face or whatever to get you fired up for the game, I don't know. I mean, I know there's some validity to that, but I can't see that as being any sort of defining factor, And then again, it's like you said with the recruiting thing. Look, I'm getting paid. I recruited all these guys to Mississippi State. That's great. Now Florida's paying me $6 million to coach there. I have to win to keep getting that $6 million a year. And I will win by getting players that I think are the best players who I've been recruiting since they were in 9th grade. I'm just at a different school now. If we want to see some degree of, recruiting reform, I'm all for it. But under the rules of the system, that's just kind of how it goes. I mean, a kid can be committed to a school up until signing day and sign with somebody else, and that's just how it goes. And I know that there was a big deal made about, Joe Moorhead didn't recruit any of Penn State's commits to State because he's a character guy. But honestly, when you look at Penn State's recruiting base, which is the Northeast, it's Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, the Midwest. How many of those kids are going to come to Starkville anyway?
Right.
He's not recruiting Penn State commits because he knows he doesn't have a chance again to become a Starkville. So, again, can you say I sort of get that, but again, that's just how it works. and that's kind of also on State for not going and hiring a guy with a better recruiting reputation, which Joe Moorhead does not have. And then also, how many recruits actually flipped? I don't think it was that many.
I don't remember. It's not like he drove a bus to like Starkville on signing day and loaded up all their guys and just drove to Gainesville.
Yeah.
So and I don't know if they were more upset with just the fact that he was recruiting them or that he actually took some. And again, I don't remember the exact number. But that's just how it goes, and it sucks. I think that the biggest issue that State fans had was that they were emotionally attached to the coach and the program.
Yeah.
And when that coach willingly says, I'm going to a better situation, again, subjectively, because, well, whether they want to admit it or not, I think State fans had this idea, kind of going back to the whole like relationship theory, is that you got a girl that loves you and will take care of you, but there's other people out there that are better options. So
again, there continue to be like there are right and wrong ways to leave a job. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I know I've already referenced him once, but Tommy Tuberville again when he was at I think it was when he was at Texas Tech. I can't remember. In fact, I'm gonna look this up real quick. Let's see, Tommy Tuberville. Let's see. So allegedly, while he was the coach at Texas Tech, he was on a recruiting visit and stepped out to take a phone call. It was the Cincinnati athletic director who offered him.
I heard about this. Yeah.
And so he left in the middle of a recruiting visit. That's the wrong way to leave a job.
Yep.
In fact, Tuberville is kind of a great example of just continually being the wrong way to leave a job.
Hell, not to do that.
But by and large, guys don't leave jobs the wrong way. And again, Mullen was professional. He was, he wasn't honest, but you can't be honest. Because if you were honest, then you would get fired.
That creates a problem. Yeah.
So again, I completely get the emotional side of the argument of like, he was my coach and now he's not, so screw that guy.
Sure.
Fine. Eventually you've got to let it go. It's kind of like Ole Miss fans with Shea Patterson. Like, he was our quarterback. Now he's not our quarterback. Screw that guy. And we all had a lot of fun watching the Notre Dame game. And now I don't care. I couldn't tell you what Michigan's record is right now. I don't know who they're playing. I don't know. I don't care.
Well, and there's a similar situation at Florida. Everybody knows what happened with Urban Meyer. At the time, it seemed like his health issues were for real, and so he retired. And then a year later, he takes the job at Ohio State.
Yeah, faking a heart attack is a bad way to leave a job.
Yeah, but again, at the time, everything seemed like it was on the up and up. And there were a lot of Florida fans who were super mad with him, saying that he lied about stuff, screw him, hope he has a heart attack and dies, all this stuff. And like my theory of it was like, A, he's going to his dream job, so good for him. And B, like this guy came in and turned Florida and returned Florida to a dynasty. Won 2 national championships, and they were the class of the SEC for 5 years. Like, thanks. Good luck wherever you go. Fans are fans for a reason. They're fanatics, and they get emotionally invested in a in a program or a school that a lot of time they have no affiliation with whatsoever. Didn't go to the school, maybe has family or
that's the thing is that these coaches don't care about the schools they're coaching at. They
typically no.
They care about their jobs, and occasionally you'll get like, Scott Frost at Nebraska, who played at Nebraska, whatever. You'll get a situation like that sometimes, but Dan Mullen's from New Hampshire. And the day before, whoever the athletics director was that called him to hire him, the day before that, he couldn't have picked Starkville out on a map. I mean, absolutely couldn't have. And so, like, again, he just doesn't they don't care about the schools they're coaching at. They care about their careers. They care about the relationships they make. That doesn't mean that today, when he left and he said all this stuff about Starkville being a great place and them being great for their family, like that doesn't mean he's lying about any of that.
Right. And
it just means that he doesn't care about Mississippi State.
Right. And well, I think with State and him, it's going to be a little bit different because that's sort of where he got started. Like that's where Dan Mullen was born, basically. They gave him his first head coaching job. I think all of his kids were born there. Like
he had one from a previous relationship already.
Okay, but
so weird that I know that.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I'm the wealth of trivial knowledge. So
waist deep in just random college football knowledge.
I just love Mississippi State so much.
It's very evident every week. But yeah, so like, and of course that offers another opportunity for fans to be more invested in Dan Mullen than they probably should have been because they offered him his first job. His kids were born here. Like this is his home, But like college coaches leave. That's how coaching works.
Yeah.
If you have a coach that stays at a program for 9 years, that's a success, even if the record wasn't.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And
I mean, look, like nobody thought he was going to stay there for 9 years when he got there.
No,
I mean it was like
pretty much like everybody thought because he was a rising coach, he was going to be there for 3 or 4 years and then catapult to a bigger, better thing.
He built that program into something pretty special,
national,
and took it to a level that they've never been at before, not consistently. So and on top of all that. Not to go full hat conspiracy theory here, but he played a major role in getting his cross-state rivals put on probation. So I mean,
a win for everybody wearing it.
Yeah. What did he do? Like, what did he do that made you so mad? Like, I don't.
Yeah, and it'll be fun to listen to Roe and Joseph kind of offer their insight on this, especially being fans of the program and just kind of seeing where they take it. But the consensus with us, I think it seems like this is standard procedure. This is how things happen with coaches.
Shots fired.
He played it, I think, about as well as he could have. There were certainly ways that he could have done it a whole lot worse. And in my opinion, just I think that you have to be grateful for what he offered to the program, what he did, what he built, and just wish him luck on his way out. That's the rational thing to do. But again, there's emotion, so
we're
rationality goes out the window sometimes.
College fans are not rational people, and that's fine. That's okay. I mean, like. The Mullen State angle makes Saturday's game a whole lot more fun, a whole lot more interesting.
Oh, it does for sure.
I mean, again, like Joe Moorhead has the potential to lose the fan base 5 games into his career. Like that's like what other coach is in that situation?
Yeah, I would really hope that State fans don't tune him out because of that. That would be awful for him.
I mean, it a lot depends on how they. And I don't want to get too much into breaking the game down, but a lot depends on how they look. I mean, if they come out and they're undisciplined and they're committing personal fouls, and Florida pops them early like Kentucky did, and they just kind of fold like they did against Kentucky, it'll be bad. It'll be real bad. And if they play hard, whatever. But
yeah, true.
But I mean, look, he elevated the program to a level they haven't seen before, and left it in really good shape. I don't think the roster is as good as they thought it was, but it's still pretty good. And
yeah,
like he had them set up to not. I mean, if they took a step back, it's not going to be a massive one. So, I think he did. I think he did a great job there, and then left it for the next guy.
Yeah, it's not
even if things are going well for you, 10 years is a long time at one school.
Yeah, it is.
The whole Bill Snyder thing, that's rare, man. That's really rare.
Yeah, I don't think I actually realized, or if I did, I had totally forgotten by now because, Kansas State and who cares? But like he's been their head coach for almost as long as I've been alive. Yeah. I mean, that'll probably never happen again ever. Mostly because schools want to all be 10-2 or better. So, but yeah, and again, it's not like Mullen signed a contract with Florida, left, and then called out Nick Fitzgerald and said, "Hey, you want to transfer?" Or called up the guy backing him up and said, "Hey, do you want to come to Florida?" That's more like poaching players to me, is getting players to transfer, and that didn't happen. He didn't leave the cupboards bare. He left them in a good position, and he did a lot of good things for him. So, whatever.
I mean, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So, we'll see what Joseph and Rowe have to offer. I'm sure that we'll get in a giant argument on Sunday night.
Well, I mean, again, this game Saturday is going to be absolutely fascinating, and it's gonna show a lot into the psyche of kind of where our maroon-clad brethren in Starkville are. So,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
well, we'll kick this conversation over to Joseph and Rowe. We'll hear what they have to say. Thank you for listening. This has been an overtime episode for Running Out the Clock. And we will see you guys record Sunday night. See you guys Monday morning with another recap of the week that was in the Southeastern Conference. See ya.
Bye-bye.